talking Illinois high school football.
If your goals are as high as you talk about, tonight's the night you go out and just take one more step.
It's a view from the West.
And it starts right now!
Welcome into View from the West, the podcast covering high school football on the western side of the state of Illinois. We cover the Western Big Six, the Three Rivers Athletic Conference, the Lincoln Trail Conference, the Northwest Upstate Illini, and of course, 8-man football. I'm your host, Greg Armstrong, joined once again by Mitch Stormer. Mitch, the season previews roll along. Here we are landing in the Lincoln Trail Conference. Mitch, you ready to talk some LTC football?
Yeah, can't wait. Enjoyed covering the conference last season. A lot of exciting football and looking forward to seeing that again this year.
Yeah, well, thank you to everyone who is joining us and listening in. If you haven't tuned in, go back in the archives. We've covered the NUIC and the 8-man. We've done their season preview. Last week, me and Mitch broke down every team from the Three Rivers Athletic Conference on both the Mississippi and the Rock divisions. A full Three Rivers Athletic Conference season preview is out there waiting for you. But Mitch, let's jump right in. Let's talk about a team that had a lot of success a year ago. The A-Town Tornadoes, 2021, they finished 11-2, advancing to the Class 1A quarterfinals. Head coach has been Rick Quinn. Great job by him last year, getting a senior-laden team, had a lot of success. But that being said, they lose 17 starters heading into 2022. Oof. So they got a little bit of work to do with some new guys filling in some new spaces.
Yeah, this is a team that surprised me all of last season. Truth be told, I didn't know that they were going to get out of the first round of the playoffs. And sure enough, they won 2 games before falling to Lexington. But this is going to be, unfortunately, I think a transition year for A-Town. Losing that many starters is really going to be tough. But Rick Quinn is a great coach, and they'll have all the ability in the world to rebuild this team. It's just a matter of how much they can compete. They might surprise me again. I don't want to put a target on my back saying that, but it's just tough. It's a big hurdle to overcome. So looking forward to seeing how they do it.
Well, Mitch, let's look at some of the names that they do have returning. Kellen Hook is a wide receiver. Tanner Klockinga at right tackle. That's a tough name. I'm not sure I got that one exactly right, but I tried. I tried real hard, Mitch. On the defensive side of the ball, Perry Severin on defensive line, Asa Stiegel, a linebacker and a safety, and Drew Scheckler as a linebacker. So they do have some pieces in place, but Mitch, they have a lot of talent that, really led them last year that's missing on the field now from graduation.
Yeah, most notably quarterback Easton Schischler really led this team to great things. So looking forward to seeing how they fill in those gaps, but the names that you rattled off, they've got experience coming back from a really good team last season, and looking forward to seeing what they can do this year.
Let's look at the Mercer County Golden Eagles next. They were 6-3 a year ago. They did lose in the first round of the playoffs to Sterling Newman, but this is an experienced roster with a variety of different types of athletes on it, according to Coach Hofer. Playing with consistency, getting out of the gates strong is important for this team.
Yeah, Coach Hofer mentioned that they hope to get off to a better start than they did last season. Difficult week 1 game against Farmington. They lost that one 41-0. Had to cancel a game for COVID. That was a game that was going to be against Knoxville. So really just didn't get off on the right foot. They started 1-3, which is more of a testament to how they came back and won 5 straight to close out the season and get to that playoff. And if you remember, Greg, that game maybe had one of the most picturesque, all-time, this is what Illinois small school football looks like. If you remember that, a Newman and a Mercer County lined up against the sun. It was great. Wonderful.
It was, that day was, it was nice. It was a nice day for playoff football, but the field was a little sloppy. And I mean that in the nicest way. That's not a criticism. I mean, it looked great. It was just like, the field was getting torn up throughout the game, and it just had those pockets of mud, and it looked really cool. You're right. You called it out that was definitely IHSA playoff football. Well, Mitch, let's look at a lot of the, experience that Coach Hofer mentioned coming back. Owen Relander, He had 291 yards receiving with 4 touchdowns, another 155 yards rushing and a touchdown. Matthew Lucas had 594 yards rushing with 9 touchdowns, 272 yards rushing and 5 TDs. William Fredrickson also ran for a touchdown and caught 52 yards receiving. So, they got some guys on offense that, picked up a lot of yardage for them last year.
Yeah, having Matthew Lucas back under the helm, that'll be great. I'm looking at a lot of tackles coming back, Greg. A lot of this team, and again, a team that started really, 1-3, but you can't take a whole lot of stock in that, having that canceled game. And then you really saw these 5 names across the board when they won those 5 straight to get to the playoffs. Javen Dellett, 34 tackles last season. Matthew Lucas, who we talked about, he also had 51 tackles and 2 interceptions on defense. Owen Relander, 31 tackles last season. Ian Willits, Brecken Heinrichs, all these names, a lot of tackles coming back for Mercer County. So this should be a really good, balanced team, I think.
Yeah, well, let's start looking at their schedule, Mitch. They opened this year at home against Farmington. So that crossover with the Prairie Land, they get a tough draw. Farmington is always a good football team. So Coach Hofer and crew will have a test in week 1. I'll be interested to see, what they can do.
Yep.
Mitch, when you start looking down their schedule, what game stands out to you, in their conference play that you think is, a spotlight game or a game that really could be critical for them?
I think, again, it's going to be their week 2 matchup. They didn't get to play it last year, but against the Knoxville team, the returning or defending, I should say, co-champs of the conference. So if they're going to take that next step, which, again, spoiler alert, this might be my pick. If they're going to take that next step, how do they stack up against Farmington? And then how do they stack up against Knoxville? Because that'll really set the tone for the season. Looking down, they end with Kewanee Wethersfield, who's another team who I think is going to make a good stride this year. So this is a tough schedule for Mercer County. So they'll have their hands full, but I think that they've got the squad to do it.
Well, speaking of Anawan Wethersfield, let's jump right into the Titans. They were 5-4 in the regular season. They lost in the first round last year to A-Town. They returned 7 or 8 starters defensively, and they have several weapons returning on offense. So head coach Tony Grip mentioned that he's got some young kids that he's really excited about in this program. So, this year, or if not this year, the future is bright, it seems like, for this program.
Yeah. With the unfortunate news that we had with Riverdale on their numbers, it looks like they're doing something right at Anawan Wethersfield. They're really focused on developing the youth in the program. They've got 50 kids in the program, 33 of them freshmen and sophomores. So this is a team that has the potential to have a lot of depth. Certainly can plug and play if there's injuries or if they need to bring some kids up for which I think will be them in the playoffs. So yeah, this is great to see. And yeah, when you've got some names, I'll rattle some off here on offense. Dylan Horry, 1,400 yards, 11 touchdowns as a sophomore last year. Colin Hornback, he was the second team All Lincoln Trail as a sophomore. So these are really good underclassmen now that they're juniors. And then they add that with some returning starters. Matthew Sentney, he's a starter that played last year as a junior. Mason Heitzler, I'm sorry, excuse me, also a returning starter. So this might be a pick. I said in the Three Rivers preview how I was excited about Monmouth Roseville. I'm kind of feeling that same sort of excitement here with Anawan Wethersfield, getting back to where they were, and we'll talk about Colton Quagliano in a minute, but back to that team that I believe that team went to the semifinals, I think, that year. So yeah, this is a team, and again, I'm really bad about spoiling my picks when we talk about this.
Yeah.
Team that I really think is going to be better than 5-5 than they were last year, and get back into a really good top seed in the playoffs.
Well, I think we'll learn something about this conference right out of the gate. Anawan Wethersfield plays on the road at Monmouth United. United was a playoff team a year ago as well. Anawan Wethersfield got the win at home last year in week 1. So now let's see kind of where's the benchmark this year? Who gets that week 1 victory? What other games do you look at in Anawan Wethersfield's schedule, Mitch, that stand out to you?
Greg, I'm not going to look past week 4 with your Crusaders.
How about that?
Hosting the Titans this year. I don't know if they played last year, but that's a fun matchup.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. I mean, if you want to make me talk about Marquette, I will. That's fine. We could do that.
Right.
But Marquette returns a lot of talent as well. So two programs in A&W and Marquette that have a lot of talent on the field with a lot of experience. So that you're right. That's a great non-conference matchup for the Titans.
Yeah, and I think too, just looking at one more game, it's that week 9 matchup. It's going to be Kewanee Wethersfield against Mercer County. That's going to be awesome.
They have met up in week 9 several times over the years, and it always has some kind of implication in the conference or in the playoffs or both. It is always a huge matchup. So, yep, that is certainly one to watch for. Mitch, quick side note, former A&W standout, you referenced him, Colton Quagliano, announced on Twitter recently that he will be attending the University of Illinois this fall, plans to continue playing baseball there.
Yeah.
So huge credit to him. That's great to see him go to a Big Ten school, Division I athlete. Credit to him. He is such a great kid and also a great athlete. It's fun to see him having this success.
Yeah, his high school accolades are out of this world, and I think he was at a junior college this year and put up just staggering numbers. So this is well earned to get this D1 scholarship. So yeah, congrats to him.
Yep. Let's move right along to a newer face in the Lincoln Trail Conference, the Knoxville Blue Bullets. They showed up last year, and Mitch, they fit right in just fine.
Yeah.
End up at the top of the conference. They were 8-1 overall. They lost in the first round of the playoffs to Bishop McNamara. But Mitch, this will be a different looking Knoxville team. They graduate 17 seniors from last year's squad. I do have to give a shout out, a thank you to Matt Wheaton from the Galesburg Register, tweeting back and forth with him earlier today. He provided me with some stats and some info. So I really appreciate him kind of hooking us up a little bit here. They lose a lot, but they do return Oscar Young. He ran the ball a handful of times last season, so that could be a running back potentially for them. They also have Bo Honeycutt and Braden Downs returning as receiver options. So those two are guys to watch. I just feel like this Knoxville program, they always have good numbers. So I just feel like that always gives them a leg up in the Lincoln Trail Conference. I think they'll be able to compete year in and year out because they, have a healthy football program.
Yeah, they were a fun team to cover last year. They really ran the ball well, seeming like every single week they put up a ton of numbers. So there's another quick note here, Greg, that they've got a kid coming in, Isaac Nolan, who was a track star for Knoxville. He's going to be going off for football. Not sure if he's ever played before. This might be his first year, but anytime you can have that kind of speed on the field is going to be good. So we'll look forward to seeing how they utilize him and see how they can build upon that really great year last year.
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret that Knoxville is a running team. That's what they do. That's their bread and butter. That's what they succeed at. So yeah, you add that kind of speed. That's an interesting thing to watch for with Isaac Nolan joining the team. Knoxville is at home against Princeville in week 1. And then looking down the schedule, Mitch, I got a game that stands out to me, but I'll let you go first and see if we, kind of agree on this one.
I think so. Are you looking at week 5?
I'm looking at September 24th. Yep. 1 p.m. Knoxville and Dupec. Dupec from the NUIC, great football program out there. They were champions of the NUIC a year ago. So that's a really interesting non-conference game. I just love it. I'm glad that one's on our schedule.
Yeah, that's a cool crossover. And like you said too, a 1:00 game, whether if that's true or typo or not, we're seeing it more often this year. Games are being scheduled on Thursdays now, or on Saturdays with different times due to a referee and the umpire shortage. So that is, like, we deal with teams, low numbers. That's unfortunately something that we're really going to have to see and deal with moving forward is a low number of officials going forward. So we're going to see different times being played, which is great that we still have officials to have for these games, and that we can be adaptable on these game times. But we're going to see that a lot more often, I think. Yeah,
it's kind of a harsh reality of what's happening now. Referee shortage, and it leads to some weird Thursday games and Saturday games. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see, how the schedule plays out year in and year out, because that will certainly be an impact moving forward. Hopefully we get more referees and it's not as big of a shortage, but for the near future, it seems to be an issue.
Yeah. The 24th, that's a Saturday. So 1:00, that'll have a playoff feel to it there in week 5.
Yeah, well, I might have to make that trip. I got to figure out what the family calendar looks like on the 24th.
Right.
Maybe it's an Armstrong family road trip. We just all go watch the game.
It sounds like you're going to Pecatonica to me.
It's beautiful this time of year.
Well, it's beautiful. It's beautiful all times of the year.
There you go. Well, let's talk more playoff teams from a year ago. The United Red Storm, a bounce back year for head coach David Milroy and the Red Storm, making the playoffs at 6-3. They did fall short to Iroquois West in the first round. Mitch, this is kind of one of those teams we've talked about with several other programs around the area. They don't want to be a one and done playoff program. They want to continue to play at that level. This was a United team that was, consistently making the playoffs. They won a state title in the first year of United's existence, going way back to, I believe, 2004. So the pedigree is there. The history is there. They want to be a contender year in and year out. I think David Milroy has what it takes as a head coach, but they lose Aiden Parkins and Cormac Flynn, two names that, we talked a lot about last year. Can they keep up? Can they keep it going at United?
Yeah. A team that really caught us by surprise, I think, last year, getting a playoff win and getting 6 wins, not just 5 in qualifying. They got to 6, get the automatic berth. So, and it really played Iroquois West tough that Saturday. So, but like you said, losing Aiden Parkins and Cormac Flynn, 2 really dynamic players who were huge keys to their success. So, David Milroy, love what he's doing there, and he'll have his hands full this year, that's for sure. But looking forward to seeing how they do that.
So one of the matchups we've already talked about in week 1, Monmouth United hosting Anawan Wethersfield. I think that's that's going to give you a benchmark of kind of where this conference is at. I'm really curious to watch that one. Mitch, what else do you see on United's schedule? What game kind of stands out to you that could be that X factor?
I'm gonna look all the way at week 9 and go to the A-Town game. 2 teams that are in similar positions, the 2 playoff teams that lose a lot of production. And so we'll see if that week 9 game gets either one of those teams back into the playoffs again, or maybe it'll get them both. Maybe they'll already be in by then. But 2 teams that I think have similar pedigrees from last year and similar issues to overcome this year. So we'll see what happens when they hit the field.
Yep, absolutely. Well, let's keep moving right along. Rova Williamsfield in the Lincoln Trail Conference was 2-7 a year ago. But Mitch, they have experience coming back. They've relied on underclassmen the past couple seasons. Now, can that experience finally pay off? For head coach Grant Goldstrand, that's the key here is, can you finally utilize that experience and make it work in your favor and kind of turn this thing around?
Yeah. Like you said, they've relied on some underclassmen. So now they've got some experience. They've got some depth. They'll be looking to run the ball with consistency. They had some success doing that last year. And they'll need a defense that maybe creates some more turnovers. So, looking forward to this team. A couple of names just right off the bat. Quarterback Riley Danner. You got a running back in Brian Bertelshofer. Hope I pronounced that correctly. Receivers on the outsides, Jackson Sharp, Lewis Sams. And 2 really good linemen, Brody Bledsoe and Graham White, who was a second team All LTC last season. So they do have a lot of names coming back that had some accolades to their names. So yeah, this team I think will be a little bit better than 2-7.
On the defensive side of the ball, Mitch, defensive end Nolan Bronow, he was a second team defensive lineman last year. Again, Graham White, a name you mentioned already, Luke Nelson, Jack Godsell, and Adam Cole, he was a second team defensive back in 2021. So experience with some accolades. Yeah, I think this is, potentially a team to watch. They open against A-Town at home in week 1. So again, I feel like this is another kind of benchmark game, and you see kind of who stacks up where in the conference really early on.
Yeah, that'll be a great game. 2 teams that we'll see who can get on the right foot. I think for Rova, it's going to be important for them to have a really successful first half of the season because they end with 3 really tough games in United, Anawan Wethersfield, and Knoxville. So if they're going to want to take that next step, hopefully they can get some of these games with a win in the column because it's going to get a little bit tougher for them at the back half of their schedule.
Let's keep moving right along, Mitch, to Princeville. They were 5-4 a year ago, lost to Marquette in the first round. 5-4, Mitch, last year, but they only won over their only win over a team that was above 500 was a 9-8 last second field goal over Anawan Wethersfield. So I think the question becomes, can they take that next step and improve on that 5-4? They're always a team that's in the mix. They've for a long time have been near the top of the conference. I guess my question is, what direction are they headed? I think we'll find out that this year.
Yeah, I think they've always been one of those teams that just plays you close. They're a tough team to play against. They had a cool story from 2020, the COVID year, that their kids would kind of hold practices unbeknownst to anybody, and just so they could get work because they didn't know what the season was going to look like. So they've got a good spirit there in Princeville, and it usually shows on the field. So yeah, can they take that next step? Can they not be in that position where they're winning these close games or always having these close games, or maybe get above that 5-win threshold? So looking to see what the Princess can do this year. They open up with Knoxville. That is at Knoxville. They start at home in week 2 against United. Looking down to their schedule, I'll just go ahead and say week 1. How do they stack up with the defending champs? I think that'll set the tone for their schedule, and we'll see what they can do against Knoxville on the road.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think the game that stands out to me is the game we just referenced against Anawan Wethersfield. Last year, Princes get the 9-8 win. Can they get another win against Anawan Wethersfield, or is A&W about to kind of take over and bounce back near the top of the conference? I think that'll be a game that will tell us a lot, moving down the road. One team left in the Lincoln Trail Conference. Stark County struggled last year to a 1-8 record. And for the Rebels, it all comes with improving on defense. Head coach Jade Nord pointed out, probably didn't want to point it out, but let us know that they gave up an average of 40 points per game last year. So, that is something that if you're going to have success, you have to improve on that. He does feel like they've had a good offseason. So we'll see if that can pay dividends on the field, for the Rebels this year.
Yeah, a lot of returning players here for Stark County. So I think that they will improve on that 1-8 record, and that defense won't give up that much this year, because you're seeing a lot of names that are 2-year players, 2-year letter winners for Stark County. On the offensive side of the ball, starting at quarterback, he played as a sophomore last year. That would be Luke Rewerts. Again, hopefully I'm pronouncing your names correctly.
Looks good. Yep. Sounds good.
One of their more dynamic players is Daniel Kaiser. He's a 2-year letter winner. He really kind of is a versatile guy. They'll throw him in the slot. They'll put him behind the quarterback as a running back. Does the kicking, does the punting. He does it all. So good to have that kind of offensive production and versatility on your roster. You've got Ethan Baxter, who was an honorable mention all conference center last year. So they've got some good size on their line. And then just talking about Ethan Baxter, 29 tackles on the defensive side too. So a lot of names that have played have seen some some rough years, but now maybe this is the year that they do take that extra step. And as I mentioned, I think they'll be better than 1-8, and I think that defense will be better.
Yeah, I mean, for head coach Jade Nord, he's had such success at Stark County. To see a record like 1-8, that's just so out of the ordinary, and it just doesn't seem like this is a Stark County program. We're not used to this kind of Stark County program. Yeah. On the defensive side of the ball, Ethan Baxter, who you mentioned, he returns with he had 29 tackles a year ago. Daniel Kaiser had 23 tackles of his own. Ryan Hillen had 41 tackles. Matthew Bowser, 31 tackles. Jordan McCauley, 26. So a lot of tackles returning on the defensive side of the ball. So hopefully that type of experience will help this Stark County Rebels team. They open on the road at Nokomis, and then they're on the road again in week 2 to start Lincoln Trail play against A-Town. That's an interesting one to me, because A-Town lost a lot of starters from a year ago and they had success. Whereas on the flip side, Stark County didn't have the success last year, but they have a lot of experience coming back. Can that show up in that game? Can Stark County come away with an early season win? That's an interesting one in week 2 for me.
Yeah. If Stark County can find a way to win those first 2 games, I think that'll really set the tone for them. They've got Knoxville in week 3, but then some other games that I could see them winning. They do have Wethersfield away in week 7 and Mercer County in week 8. So they're again, their back half of the season is a little bit tougher. So if they're going to make that extra push, hopefully they can get some wins in the first half and build that momentum, because they'll have a harder last 2-3 games of the season.
All right. Well, Mitch, we've talked about all of them, talked about the teams and the players in the Lincoln Trail Conference. We'll start with, who's your favorite? Who is your potential pick in the Lincoln Trail to take it all?
It's going to come down to Mercer County and Enno and Wethersfield, I think. I'm going to give the nod. I think I'm going to give the nod to Mercer County to win. I certainly think Enno and Wethersfield is going to be more improved than 5-4. And then I think this is the year that they'll really get good. There's their sophomores from last year's or juniors this year. So then I think that next year's Enno and Wethersfield team is going to be really, really good. But I think what Mercer County brings back from a playoff team last season, who was probably still even better than 6-3. I think they'll take the reins from Knoxville and A-Town and reclaim their spot at the top of the conference.
All right. I like that one. I agree. I think that for this year, I like Mercer County. I like Mercer County as one of the favorites heading into the season. Mitch, I'm going to go out on a limb a little bit. I think for my dark horse, for a team that I think is going to be improved, watch for Rova Williamsfield.
Yeah.
I think that's a team that can make some noise. I think head coach Grant Goldstrand has things moving in the right direction. And I think if he can, use the pieces that he's got, there's a lot of experience coming back. I think that's a team that can make some noise in the Lincoln Trail Conference.
Definitely agree there. And I said it just a minute ago. I think Stark County will be better than 1-8, just with the amount of players that they have, experience that they have coming back. There's no reason to believe why they can't be better than that. So looking forward to seeing. Again, you had A-Town who loses a lot. You had Knoxville who loses a lot. So is this conference maybe a little bit more wide open than it was last year? I think so. And games that might not have been winnable last year are more winnable now for certain schools. But I think that we both mentioned Mercer County and Enno and Wethersfield are really going to shine. And I hope that week 9 matchup is as good as I hope it is. And both teams are really set for their playoffs, and we can just enjoy the game.
Yeah, I do think, I will say, because I want to make sure we cover our bases here, I think it's going to be a pretty wide open conference. Like you said, don't sleep on head coaches Rick Quinn and Ryan Hebard from Knoxville and from A-Town. I think that those two guys can coach a team and get them prepared to win a conference as well as anybody. So yeah, I think that makes it fun. I think that's what we're here for. It's gonna make for fun debate throughout the season. I think discussion for sure.
And when does the merge with Prairie Land? Is that next season?
Next season. Yeah.
Okay.
So this is the last year of kind of the current look of the Lincoln Trail being separate and the Prairie Land being separate. They'll kind of merge next year. Yep.
So many teams to preview next year.
That is going to become a massive conference. Yeah.
We're going to do a brand new uniform breakdown. We're going to have to do it all. That'll be exciting.
We will have to do that because I just saw a tweet of Farmington's helmets. Mitch, Have you seen their helmet? It's cool.
No, now I got to look it up.
Yeah. So it's a purple helmet and the gold decals, and they have it's a star with an F in it, but then it's got like a pitchfork going through it. And then they have the pitchfork going down the middle of the helmet too. So it's a cool look.
Yeah, we like that. Like that.
Yeah. Well, for this year, we won't have to worry about them so much because they're still in the Prairie Land, but we've covered our bases for the Lincoln Trail Conference. Mitch, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to everyone who's been listening to our season previews. And I'm not sure if anybody's quite ready for next week. We're bringing in the Score Squad. We're bringing in WQAD, Matt Randazzo, Corey Kuffler. We might even bring in Brian Stocking and let the chaos consume us. We'll see. Nothing's set in stone yet, but It's going to be real interesting whenever you get all that collection together. If anyone listened to the Instant Reacts a year ago, you know that it goes off the rails real quickly. We'll try to keep them corralled in for a season preview. But next week, we're talking about the Western Big Six. If you hadn't caught them already, the NUIC and the 8-man season previews are in the archive, along with the Three Rivers Athletic Conference. So, Mitch, we're rolling right through here. The conference previews are well underway. We are knocking on the door of real high school football. It's coming.
Yeah, we're just right at a month or just under a month left. So looking forward to those week 1 games that we just talked about, and all the games that we've already previewed and that we will preview. So yeah, let's just fast forward a little bit, and we'll be talking about game recaps here pretty soon.
That sounds good. Well, that will wrap it up this week. Thank you everyone for listening. We'll see you next week for the Western Big Six season preview. That'll do it for this week's episode of View from the West. Thank you so much for listening. I encourage you to go out to Apple Podcasts or Podbean and subscribe so you can follow along, and downloads will come automatically every week. You can follow along on Twitter at ViewFromWestPod. You can also email me if you're interested in being a sponsor, viewfromwestpod@gmail.com. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.